All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So I am going to be out on Tuesday, but I'm going to be able to give you some things to do that are really a combination of review for things that you already did in macro, but will be, again, useful in micro because they show up on the test. They're tested in both micro and macro. So do a little of that. We'll also build on ideas that you already should be familiar with, and that some of them probably won't be that tricky for you. So this will be a good way for me to get some things done while I'm not there. You guys can watch some videos, and hopefully it's not too rough on you, but yet we're still productive. Since I'm not going to be there on Tuesday, you'll also have to wait and get your results for your final exam from macro on Thursday. I can tell you right now, I believe there were 2 5s, 1 4, 3 3s, 8 2s, and 3 1s. So staying out of the one category, we'll call that good. And you'll get to see more of what you messed up on Thursday. So I apologize about that, but it is what it is. So I have a worksheet for you. The first 2 problems are comparative advantage problems, input-output problems, and I'm going to trust that you should know how to do that, and hopefully it's very easy for you. If not, check out the videos on production possibilities curves and comparative advantage on BCPS 1 or on my YouTube page. If you don't know how to do it after that, look at your book, talk to your neighbor, but then you're going to get to 3 and 4, which are problems that you haven't technically seen before, but I suspect they're not going to be too tricky for you. So they're basic supply and demand questions. I'm operating on the assumption that you know the supply and demand shifters. You know your septic, you know your genti. If you need to go and review that, go do it. You know where the videos are. But I'm not doing that here. So I have a market for us. The market for brownies. All right? Simple enough. Hopefully nothing here is throwing you out for a loop. We got P for price, QD, QS, quantity demanded, quantity supplied. We got supply curve, we got demand curve. I don't know if my hand motions went in the right directions there, but that's what we got. And we got equilibrium price and quantity here. Now, every problem that we've done so far has been simple enough, and it's been one shift. One thing happens. Either the supply curve shifts or the demand curve shifts. Not and. Okay? We haven't seen the supply curve and the demand curve shift on these graphs. Although we did do it in macro when we moved our aggregate demand and then our aggregate supply curve at the same time, or one after the other in sequence. So here we're going to do both together. So we got brownies. In question 3, I tell you that the price of sugar goes up, and that sugar is an input, that you need it to make brownies. Well, if I know that an input price increased, that means it makes my life as a producer more difficult. It's harder for me to produce things. So I want to see my supply curve go to the left here. So I'm going to do that up here on the graph. You should probably do this along on your worksheet here. So supply curve goes to the left. I label it S1, S2. Going to the left, I get a new equilibrium point. So I'm going to label my new price P2, my new quantity Q2. Boom. Good. Now, in past, that's where we stop. We're done. But it says simultaneously, at exactly the same moment in time, not only does the price of sugar go up, but the price of milk goes down. And you know, if you're eating a brownie, you gotta have some milk. So if the price of milk went down, milk is a complement. It goes along with brownies. If I'm gonna buy some brownies, I'm gonna buy some milk, and vice versa. So if the price of milk goes down, the quantity demanded of milk will increase. People will purchase more milk. Well, if they're buying more milk, they sure as heck better have some brownies to go with it. So our demand curve is going to go to the right. So I'm going to do that here. This is where it gets a little tricky, so watch out. So I move my demand curve to the right. D2. Now this is where you got to pay attention. So I'm going to label our equilibrium points here so that you kind of follow the story. So originally, right here, that was equilibrium number 1. Then the price of sugar went up. Okay, I moved that, and that's 2, let's say. Now the question is, where's our final equilibrium point? Well, it's going to be at the intersection of D2 and S2, and it is here. Now, these things happen at the same time, so you could have done the milk first and moved your demand, and then your supply, and you would have still ended up with 3 here. So that doesn't really make a big difference, but it kind of helps the process for some of you. Now the question is, what happened to the price and quantity here? Now, I'm going to label it for you, and it's going to start to get confusing. So P3, it seems pretty clear that the price went up. That's not the confusing part. The confusing part in this scenario is the quantity. So if I label this Q3, and I ask you, what happened to the price and quantity of brownies when these two things occurred? It would look like the price went up, and if I compare Q1 to Q3, it looks like Q3 is smaller, so the quantity went down. But wait a second, I want you to watch something that I'm going to do here. Let's assume that instead of just moving the demand curve like I did, let's assume I move it way to the right, or just a little bit further to the right. So I'm going to move it all the way up here, like that. And then my third equilibrium point will be up here instead. And if you notice now, my Q3 is beyond Q1. So it looks like the quantity's gotten bigger. So this leaves us in a conundrum. Interesting word, a conundrum. So the price definitely went up. But the quantity of brownies demanded and supplied, well, we just can't be sure. We're not sure. So we call this indeterminate. I hope I spell this right. Indeterminate. Or is it indeterminate? N-A-T. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. It's unknown. We're unsure. We're not quite certain what happened to our quantity. And if you're still confused, saying, well, what about the price, Mr. Sutton? Well, look, the price, even when I made the new equilibrium point, is still up at P3. So we do not know. When you have a dual shifter, something is going to be unknown. Whether it's the price or the quantity just kind of depends on the scenario. But you will always be unsure about one of them. All right? And the way you figure it out is you just follow your points and you think, oh, well, let's see. If I move that last curve just a little bit further or a little bit less, would it change? We're going to do another sample here to practice and see how you do. Look at number 4 on your own. See if you can try it on your own. I'm going to work it out on the board in just a second, okay?